right, let's see if we can get that in frame correctly. Apparently I have a problem with technology. So who knew? We're gonna wait like 60 seconds, give everybody just a chance to join. We're gonna go through basically the setup of how these videos get shot and just a little bit of camera equipment and some process. Not gonna spend a ton of time, but you know, important detail for y'all. Show you some of the changes that are kind of going on real time, what the preview of the next video is, which is entirely shot and downloading. You know, we got one more piece of footage to download and then get edited. And then we're going to talk about very, very cool stuff here, right? There's a quarter panel on the car. It kind of looks like a charger. Kind of, if you squint. Anyway, 60 seconds. Okay. First things first. Thank y'all for joining. We're going to do this live video. I do always like to check in with y'all. My associate Kurt always tells me that, hey, these live videos are a good idea. They're not my default. I do like sharing this stuff with y'all, but just so you know, like from the process, I see my own face here on the screen, so I don't even know if I can really turn this around, but it's important to have pictures framed. So it's really weird, but nevertheless, we're gonna go through all this detail. I won't burn up a bunch of y'all's time because I think I wanna save some of this for the video, but for you to see, this is a great chance for me to check in and show you guys some of the stuff that if you're following on Instagram, you're seeing some of the progress made along the way sort of in real time, and this is a chance to catch up and show you guys that. So first, how do these videos get shot? You know, it's a question that sometimes people ask, what sort of camera equipment are you using? And I'm gonna disappoint you because it's not all that fancy. But first, I will use this, my phone. I have an iPhone 13. It's got some pretty good, you know, camera, cinematic mode, and slow-mo on it. That's pretty handy for like little shots. It's got good color on it too, so there's something that they've got in there that works really well. I have a GoPro that is charging because that's what GoPros do. And I will use this gimbal here that is a really inexpensive, I think it's like $100, $120. That it's not a gimbal, it's a slider track or whatever. But that's how I get like the rotating shots. That's pretty cool. But if you notice from the last video, we stepped up in a big way. Chris got a new camera, the Super Sony, and I will actually get a smaller, lighter version of this myself, which was a goal that I had, just so you guys know. Y'all are responsible for this, by the way. I probably would have continued to shoot with GoPros and my phone and all that sort of stuff and just left well enough alone. But I made a deal that like if we hit 10,000 followers or subscribers on the page, at that point there would be like, I'll just call it like critical mass that, I'll go get a real camera. Because I know what these things can do when they shoot in RAW and you can get good color on them. So this is the Super Sony. And I will have a much smaller version of it, but we've got all kinds of great stuff on here. A nice big lens, this ND filter on the front, which is what this guy is right here, the sliders. That's how we get all the like really nice welding shots. And obviously the handheld stuff that's nice that Chris can do, and just this is true if Chris were holding an iPhone or a GoPro, he can get in and do a lot of like the handheld and, you know, get some shaky cam documentary effect so that it's like you guys are here in the shop with me, but we can do that with very high quality equipment. So I will have another version of that probably next week, and then you'll start to see the footage in the episodes kind of start to level up, right? Still have a GoPro occasionally, still have a phone. But among these three cameras, you piece it all together, throw it in a timeline in Adobe Premiere, and it takes me about a week to week and a half to edit these things. And I chip away at them. It's what I do on my lunch break. I'll get up early and I'll, you know, basically try to make a few minutes. But if you're gonna make a 20 to 30 minute video, generally speaking, if you want to go like max quality, sometimes it takes an hour to make a minute, like really polished. Sometimes it goes a little bit faster. But in terms of progress for the car, let's talk about that. How about that? Doesn't that look a little bit like a charger? I mean, if you squint, it looks a little bit like a charger, and because it is a little bit like a charger. We've got the rear end in, and I've got the links that are, I'm starting to set those up because I got to get the axle perfectly squared to the frame and to the front suspension. So that means plumb bobs and all that sort of deal. the way that I had to do this was leveling up the car using the same jacks from when I did the front suspension, well, all the suspension on the Suburban. So the car is perfectly level. And this this piece of steel actually comes from the door. This is the last piece of leftover steel from when I built these garage doors. And that's on the stands here because, well, we need to create a new mark for level, right? You can't trust the floor anymore. You can't trust the floor to begin with, right? But you can't trust the floor when you have the car perfectly level in the air and you know there's a slope on your shop floor. Most slabs have a very slight slope, so if there's any water, it drains outside. Quarter panel's on because I had to fit the axle forward to back. And you can't really do that with just the inner wheel houses, especially since it's a custom frame and I've really worked over the at least the inner part of the wheel houses, right? They're pretty warmed over. And I actually moved the front suspension or the rear suspension forward about 1 inch. The front suspension is moved forward 2 inches. This is moved forward 1 for a very simple reason. I just like the way it looked better. Make sure you guys can see that. From factory, these tires were pushed way far back, and the intersection from the, got a couple of mosquitoes in here. The intersection where the fender intersected the tire, just from a visual perspective, was way asymmetrical. And I'm not saying you got to have symmetry, but the right amount of asymmetry, it looks a whole lot better. There was a big fat gap up here, and by pushing the axle forward, it makes this arc follow the tire much more closely, and you get the intersection here and the intersection here has only a minor amount of asymmetry, and then it flows backwards. So that's details, but I think if you're gonna build a car, if I'm only gonna build this one time, so if I'm gonna do that, I might as well just like max out my effort. So that's why the quarter panel is on here, is to make sure that wherever this 325 is, that's where it's really gonna live. And once I have this thing locked in, I'll be able to set fore and aft and square it all up to everything else on the car. And then I can start doing, full bump and all that sort of stuff. It's sitting at ride height right now. So that's, yeah, I've got my work cut out for me because I've also got to make this a little bit of a wide body, blister some fenders. It's a lot of work. It's what I planned for, but right now it's just get the stinking axle in and make sure that the front suspension and the rear suspension are perfectly parallel to one another. I don't know. That's just something I think about, invest time in. Just so you can see the suspension, torque arm, 2 lower links. There is a torque arm will go in here. You'll see that on another video. And then the rear is a Watts link, right? Which is basically a split panhard bar with the center pivot. So there's a lot left to set up. Honestly, my goal for today in the shop is actually to take a couple of pieces of rectangular tube, or square tube, I'm sorry, and actually weld the axle directly to the frame so that it's like suspended and hanging in air and locked in place at ride. And then I can build the link mounts and all that sort of stuff with a certain amount of adjustment and get those all set up. So that's what I'm doing. In any case, look, I'm gonna just kind of close it down here. I'll just tell you that I have appreciate you guys' support of saying, yeah, David, do some longer videos. If you like these lives, these little check-ins, just like and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. If you want to support any of this, that is actually the best way that you can do is like, subscribe, and share it with a friend, right? If you think this stuff is cool, tell somebody else. But what I'm gonna tell you is doing a little bit longer episodes, I think, which I appreciate y'all's support on, goes a good long way to helping me tell a more meaningful story that I think better parallels the experience that we have as hot rodders, because we don't live just like one weekend at a time. A weekend, you stack them together on these big projects and you kind of create these moments of completion. It's not just like, oh, well, I did this in a weekend and here's my video. And we did this and this and this and this and this. Like it's pretty dry. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to show that a guy who's never built a pro touring car, let alone a pro touring Mopar, can figure it out with the right time, help from some friends, and good tools. That's the goal. So we'll be back together next week. We'll have a full-length video, lots of good stuff, the full front end of the anti-roll bar. And we're gonna go visit a friend, my friend Cole, who's letting me borrow, what a nice guy, letting me borrow an MSD intake to make sure that all this stuff fits up under the cowl, because it's like 10 pounds in a 1 pound sack. So anyway, glad y'all are here. Appreciate it. And then see you next week. Okay, Kurt, you can call me now. I got your texts.